Everything that you touch runs on chips. Your phone, your car, even your refrigerator, they're all powered by chips. But right now, chips are powering the biggest tech boom that we have ever seen in 20 years, and there's 3 critical companies right now that are at the center of everything: NVIDIA, AMD, and TSM. The most famous investors of all time and the richest investors of all time are putting all their money on these 3 companies because they're betting that these companies are going to drive us into the future and their cash flows are going to absolutely explode. So today I'm going to walk you through who's going to win, who might fall behind, and where I'm actually going to put my personal money to capitalize on this massive move that's happening right now. So let's go back to 2020 when we had the massive COVID shutdowns. The world was shut down and suddenly chips became everything. Automakers couldn't ship chips, PS5s were reselling for $1,000, but guess what came along? AI, and it lit a fire under the entire semiconductor industry. But here's the thing, this isn't just a trend, this is a foundation for the next industrial revolution. The 4th industrial revolution is happening right now. So right now, chips are essentially the new oil, but there's a massive supply chain and a massive scale problem that's happening right now. And that's where these 3 big players come in. So first, we're going to talk about NVIDIA because this is considered to be the grandfather of AI. This really laid the foundation for everything. So in 2015, NVIDIA was known for their gaming GPUs, and gamers loved them. They were very powerful, they were the best in the game, so gamers were buying these chips like crazy. But Wall Street, they weren't really impressed just yet. But then a massive shift happened where NVIDIA realized that their chips could process massive amounts of data in parallel to train these large language models, and then the next wave of AI, which is happening right now, to then power the future of what AI could actually be. So that made these chips perfect for training AI models. So then they went all in. They have their CUDA software, which is essentially like the iOS that runs on top of the iPhone. They partnered with hyperscalers such as Meta and Tesla and Google and Microsoft. All these companies want to build out their AI data centers like crazy, and they just can't get their hands on enough of these chips. So what happens when there's a lot of demand? The prices could go way up, and when the prices go way up, guess who's going to reap the rewards from that? NVIDIA. They're going to be able to make a lot more money. So now fast forward to today, and over 80% of the AI training runs on the NVIDIA platform, and the new Blackwell chip that just came out, and that's the chip that NVIDIA is scaling right now. There's so much demand for this chip, pretty much everybody wants to get their hands on it. So it's like, when is this gravy train of profits going to slow down for NVIDIA? Well, we'll talk about that in just a second, but right now things are looking good. So Tesla, for example, is using these NVIDIA chips to train their full self-driving fleet so that this robotaxi network could go drive around the world, autonomously. And there's so much demand for these chips from NVIDIA that their profit margin is over 76%. Just think about it. This water bottle right here, if I buy it for $1, just know that they're making 76 cents for every $1 that I buy these water bottles for. So the profit margins are astronomical. And what does that mean when profit margins are super high? Well, there's demand for that product. If there's that much demand for the product, just jack your prices up to the moon and you could just gouge these people right now while you can. But there is a little bit of competition coming right now that could be a threat for NVIDIA. So we're going to roll into AMD in just a second. And then TSM, which we're going to get into towards the end, that is the whale in the room, to be honest with you, because TSM controls everything. But here's the kicker, and this is what sets NVIDIA apart. They created an ecosystem, which is called CUDA, which is essentially the software that runs on top of these AI chips, so that you could basically plug these chips into your business, and then you have the software already pre-built to then go run these models on your business to become more efficient, because the whole goal of AI is to be more productive and more efficient. But if you just have all this AI compute power, but you don't know what to do with it, it's not really going to help you in your business right away. But if you have the AI power and the system to actually run it and be more efficient for your business, that is the true whale in the room, and that is a big needle mover for these businesses. So that's why everybody wants to get their hands on these NVIDIA chips. And if you're a developer for these AI applications, you're going to build on top of NVIDIA because it's so much easier to build on top of NVIDIA versus the competition. But as you probably could have guessed, there's going to be a catch with NVIDIA, and it's that Wall Street is pricing them in like they already own the entire future, like there's going to be no other competition out there. They're trading right now at 40 to 50 times trailing earnings. So what that essentially means is this. Let's just attribute this water bottle to the whole company of NVIDIA. And let's say that this water bottle right here costs $100. Great. And you're gonna say, well, this water bottle right here, if I buy it for $100, which is the whole business of NVIDIA, how much profit does this water bottle produce for me? And let's think about it. We bought it for $100, but if you're trading at a 50 PE ratio, that essentially means if you pay $100 for this water bottle, they're only generating $2 per year in profit, because $2 times 50 for the PE ratio, that's 100, and it's a $100 water bottle right here. So basically what I'm saying is this: you bought it for $100, there's only $2 per year in profit, so it's gonna take you 50 years to get your initial investment back. You buy it for $100, $2 per year in profit, that's 50 years to get your initial investment back. So it's not cheap right now. So if the revenue and earnings per share keep growing massively going into the future, the stock's going to do great. But if the revenue and earnings per share happens to go down, or more competition comes, which potentially AMD is coming, which we'll talk about that in a second, the stock could go down quite a bit. So while I'm bullish on NVIDIA in the long term, this is a name that I'm not going to buy call options on. I might sell put options on it, but I'm probably just going to dollar cost average into the stock, especially when it goes down on the dips. I'm going to buy more, and when it goes up and pumps much higher, I'm just going to let my profits ride. So honestly, AMD is one of my favorite ones right now, and I always love a good underdog story, because imagine that you're going to say, I'm going to compete with NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is this massive whale in a room that has been here and done that years before you even tried to get into this field, which is the AI chips and compute stuff. And then you actually pull through and you're starting to give NVIDIA a run for the money. So AMD might be one of the best in my opinion. So in 2014, AMD was trading under $2 per share, and Wall Street pretty much gave up on them. Intel owned the CPU market, and NVIDIA was eating up the world with the GPU market. Then the CEO, Lisa Su, stepped in, and not only did she turn the company completely around, she made it a threat to all these other companies that, hey, we're here, you're not going to dominate this field any longer, we're going to develop our chips, we're going to develop the iOS, which is like the CUDA equivalent, that's going to run on top of these chips and then compete with NVIDIA. So today, AMD powers the best gaming consoles from Sony and Microsoft, which is the Xbox and the PlayStation, and their new MI300X chip is being adopted by Microsoft and Amazon. This is massive because Microsoft and Amazon are saying, we're not going to buy NVIDIA anymore because NVIDIA is price gouging us too much. And when NVIDIA price gouges us too much, we're just going to go with the competition of AMD. And the key word here is go with the competition. So when there's two competitors out there in the world, what usually happens, they're going to compete for price and they're going to compete for quality. So this is actually going to be great for companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Tesla and whoever else wants to build out their data centers, because they now have competition out there. And when there's competition, they're usually going to get more bang for their buck. NVIDIA and AMD are going to compete on price, but they're also going to have to deliver the highest quality and the most compute power for the price. So that's good for the end user. But for AMD and NVIDIA, it might not be so good. So that's why we have to talk about TSM at the end, which is the absolute whale in the room, because they're probably going to win either way. But here's the thing about AMD. They don't manufacture their own chips, and neither does NVIDIA. They use TSM to build their chips. So they're essentially just designing their chips, and they send the blueprints to TSM, and then they essentially say, hey, TSM, go build this chip for us. So AMD understands that they're not trying to beat NVIDIA overnight, but they're just slowly carving out market share in the AI inference and low latency processing areas, which are two massive lanes that most people are ignoring right now. So as AMD continues to carve that out, they're slowly taking market share of the AI data center inference also. And the key thing here about valuation versus NVIDIA, AMD is much cheaper and they're actually growing at similar growth rates. So AMD is trading at around 30 times earnings, which basically means this. You buy this water bottle for $100, which is the whole company of AMD, it's going to take you 30 years to get your initial investment back, versus NVIDIA would have taken you 50 years to get your initial investment back. So it is a little bit cheaper on a valuation basis, which of course I love that. So to me, AMD is kind of like buying Tesla back in 2019. People laughed, Wall Street didn't really like it, but then look what the stock of Tesla did in the meantime. It went up a lot, and yes, it was very, very volatile, but look at what it did from A to B. So if you can invest your money in AMD, forget about it for a few years, potentially sell some put options and potentially buy some leap call options, you're probably going to do very, very well. But there will be a lot of volatility in the middle of that, and you have to be able to filter all that out. Now, the whale in the room is going to be TSM. So essentially, NVIDIA and AMD, like I said, they design the chips, but TSM builds the chips, and they have massive, massive market share. There's really no competition at all for TSM, and it doesn't seem like competition is coming in the near future. So TSM is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Some people put the C at the end and some some people don't. But listen to this. They produce 92% of the world's AI chips, which is a massive, massive market share. Apple, Nvidia, AMD, even Intel, they all rely on TSM to build the chips. And they're on pretty good terms with Trump right now because they just announced that they're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in Arizona to build out their next gen factory to build the next gen of chips. So of course, that's great. That's amazing. That's good that we can have some chip manufacturing here in the United States, because the main problem right now with TSM is that the vast majority of the chips are coming out of Taiwan, and everyone's always freaking out that China might invade Taiwan, and when they do that, the chip sector is going to get crushed and China's going to own the whole thing. It's going to cause a whole world war, all this crazy stuff, which of course is possible. But as they're diversifying where they're building these plants, which is in the US, which is the big one that's coming, that is good for TSM, and that's what we want to see. We want to see a little bit of diversification away from being so close to China. So if conflict does break out between the US and China, supply chains are going to freeze overnight, and that is the massive wild card with TSM. To be completely honest with you, I doubt that it's going to happen, but if it does happen, it will be very, very bad for the chip sector. The whole AI sector is going to get crushed. So I think about this a lot, and I talk about this with people in Discord all the time, where it's like Nvidia versus AMD, and I keep trying to beat this in people's heads that there doesn't have to necessarily be one winner or the other. You could either buy both of them or you could buy all three, because if you buy AMD and Nvidia, you pretty much have your bases covered from an AI chip design standpoint. And then if you buy TSM, you are going to be insulated because they're the only ones in the game that could even manufacture these chips. And there are rumors that companies like Amazon and Tesla are going to build their own chips and cut AMD and Nvidia out of the equation. But even at that, if you have TSM, those companies like Tesla and Google and Meta and Amazon, all these other companies, they're going to design their own chips, but then they're going to go send it to TSM and say, hey, can you make this for us? So in my opinion, TSM is the most insulated company out of all of them, and that's why I have a lot of money invested in TSM right now. I have shares, I have sold puts. I'm very bullish on TSM for the long run. But again, there is going to be a lot of volatility in the meantime. So you don't necessarily need to pick the one big winner. I would personally just buy all three and just be very, very patient with it. Maybe split that part of your portfolio, a third, and a third, because you will capture a lot of upside as the years go on by holding those three companies. But here's the critical thing. Chips, they're not just a trend. This is critical infrastructure. And the companies that are controlling the design and the manufacturing of these chips, they're going to control the future. So thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. Make sure you like and subscribe if you found this information useful. And definitely comment below. I'm very curious what you guys think about TSM, Nvidia, and AMD. Which ones do you hold? Which one do you think is maybe a bubble? Which one's going to fail going into the future? I would love to hear what you guys have to say about that stuff. So I'll see you guys in the next video.